Hello, everybody. Welcome to Aquarius Rising Africa. And yes, I cocked it up today with the time. I do apologize. I was supposed to put 6:05 and I put 5:05. And as Bryce says, it's Mercury retrograde. So yeah, we're bound to have these little glitches here and there. Anyway, welcome to Aquarius Rising Africa. And it's so good to see you all in the chat. And I am super excited today to have my first time guest on Aquarius Rising Africa, but not the first time I've filmed with you, because we've been together on Bryce's show on 2 previous shows. And I just love what you do. You are fascinating, amazing, as bright as a button, and just awesome. So welcome Jessica Jones, who's also known as the Cryptid Huntress. So those of you who've been watching Bryce's show would definitely, she needs no introduction, but welcome. I'm so happy to have you on Aquarius Rising. How are you, Jessica?
Oh, thank you. I am doing so excellent today. Thank you so much for having me. This is going to be a treat for me to get to even be here. So yeah, I just love hanging out with you.
Yeah, absolutely. We've definitely had such fun. You know, I always say the great thing about this platform, and I know like Bryce and I often talk about this, and you know, we're just chatting a little bit off air now, talking about, you know, the trolls and things we have to put up with because of what we represent and what we stand for, and you know, all of these things. But it's really cool to have you. And I see I've got a Jeremy Joburger in here. Welcome, my fellow countryman. It's good to have you here. Anyway, so really good to have you. But Jessica, before we carry on, why don't you tell us, because let me just find my tongue. You are a remote viewer, and you've been doing this for quite a while, and you like really have been doing some fascinating things. I know you work with Bigfoot, and we've done a show on the Bigfoot and I want to say big feet. we've done some shows on the different types of Bigfoot, and of course you've been doing some amazing viewing, as I said, and as you can see, of underground places and all sorts of things. And hey, Bryce, thank you for being our moderator today. So it's really, really great to have you. Anyway, so maybe before we go ahead with that, maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself. How the heck did you get into this? And I mean, I know you obviously you are definitely spiritually gifted. You wouldn't be doing these things unless you have the spiritual gifts to be able to do them, and especially doing them in the way that you do, because I've watched a couple of your interviews and you've got some amazing people on your show, and I'm definitely even want to talk to you about them, and maybe even grabbing them on Aquarius Rising as well, because I definitely think they'd be able to fit in here. Anyway, that's a story for another day. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, hey everybody in the chat. I see some of my folks in here today too. I'm so excited. Yes, so I'm Jessica Jones. I'm also known as the Cryptid Huntress. Okay, and I am a Bigfoot field researcher. Actually, just a all-around cryptid field researcher. I was in the woods all day yesterday, as a matter of fact, doing some animal tracking and Bigfoot tracking with my son. So yeah, I'm on 3 different research teams here in the United States. Our focus is mainly in the southeastern region of the United States. But yeah, I've been doing this since 2011 or 2012. I've been doing it for a little while. And the way I got into remote viewing was through my Bigfoot field research team. And I had never even heard of remote viewing before. But we were having so many occurrences out in the field when we were doing our Bigfoot field research. From the first expedition I ever went on, we were pretty much accosted by a low-flying UFO, orbs, having these Bigfoot experiences, but we were having cases of missing time, things that were running up. Like I had something that ran up behind me in the woods, and it knocked my legs out from underneath me, and it kept going, but there was nothing there. You know, things like that. With the missing time and our equipment malfunctioning and the hours going forwards and backwards and stuff. And the head of my team happened to be a remote viewer, a really good one. And he suggested, first of all, that my team go and start studying alien abductions. Because we were having so much kind of ET related activity out in the field when we were doing our Bigfoot research. And then also he was like, well, you know, maybe we should, I want you guys to be able to look into this and become more psychically switched on. So if you guys want, we can learn remote viewing as a team. And it could be another tool in our tool belt for when we're out in the field to study cryptids and to communicate, not to study them, but to communicate with them as well.
Wow.
Because
just tell us, for those of us who don't know, what exactly, because it's only recently I found out what a cryptid is. So maybe can you clarify and just let us know, for those of us who don't know, what exactly is a cryptid?
Yes, a cryptid is any animal that is not identified by science all the way. Okay. Now, I disagree with Bigfoot's being a cryptid at this point, because I do believe that science, I mean, there's been many studies done on the genetics, the genome project, their DNA. There have been samples taken. We have proof that they're real. I've experienced them. I mean, a lot of people have. I mean, there's videos all over the internet. You can see a Bigfoot if you just type in the Patterson-Gimlin film. Okay, that's a real Bigfoot. Okay, Sasquatch.
Wow, yeah.
But it's any kind of animal that has not yet been identified by science or in the books. Okay, so I think that personally, from all the research that I've done, I do believe that Sasquatch especially have been identified. I think our government knows about all of these cryptids.
Right.
Okay.
No
I think
doubt.
governments all over the world know about all these cryptids. I think that they work with them in some cases.
Yeah.
So,
I'm pretty sure about that as well. You know, one thing I've gotten to know again on this channel is people who've been to incredible places and seen incredible things, and all of them will talk about some kind of a off-earth creature or experiences that we've really been dumbed down to, you know, that they've kept away from the general public. And that's what's so amazing, to have people like yourself who obviously go there and do these things and see it and bringing it out to the general public, which is awesome. So yeah, I believe definitely that there's a lot of creatures that move in and out of portals and dimensions and things like that, that are not just your normal sheep or goat or pig or buck or whatever, bear or whatever the case might be, right?
oh yeah.
There's a lot of it.
If people only knew what's lurking around in the dark, you know, yeah. I honestly, I tell all of my viewers, because I never went public with my research. For 10 years, I kept it quiet. And I somehow was thrusted upon a stage one day. And from that point on, I immediately was given a radio show and offered one. Okay. And I took the opportunity to go forward and start telling my story, because I think it is time, as far as disclosure goes, that the world knows about these cryptids. Okay. And I never, ever want anyone to be scared or to live in fear. And I think that my job is to tell my stories and just let the public be aware of what's out there through my experiences. But to not be scared. I am a huge advocate of people getting out into the woods, going to our national forest, our state parks, and having fun and enjoying themselves, but also be very aware of what's lurking in those woods, because we have an epidemic of missing people here in the United States, especially going missing from national parks.
Would those be called the 411s, the 411 missing people?
Yes, there's a gentleman named David Paulides who wrote a series of books called Missing 411. And I have read the North American Missing 411 book. There's different versions. He's done several books in a series. And there's even been a movie made about it, because it's to me, it's an epidemic. We have clusters. He was able to identify clusters of missing people. And this is something that it's not talked about. You know, the government doesn't put out these stats. As a matter of fact, they don't even talk about it. And he had a really hard time getting the data for missing people in our national parks, because it is so vast and there's so many people going missing.
Wow. That's really incredible. And I think it's so true, because, you know, we're hearing about this more and more, even here where we are, you know. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that, you know, in South Africa as well, that obviously, I mean, it's one of the most ancient places around, if you're just looking at the Bushmen and all of that. So there's a lot of stuff that occurs here, you know, that is just never spoken about or brought up to the general public. I mean, there've also been discoveries of giants and all sorts of things here in certain parts of South Africa as well. So I think it's amazing that these things are being spoken about now and coming to the fore. And it's really amazing that people like yourself are doing that. But now, how did you get into, I mean, when you talk about the remote viewing and you were trained to do that, did you have any experiences like seeing beyond veil or seeing through dimensions and stuff like that from when you were a kid? What was your experiences growing up around seeing the stuff that is not necessarily only of the earthly realm?
Well, of course I did. I think a lot of the people on my team, actually, we all were very psychically switched on to begin with, whether they knew it or not. Because a lot of us first of all, we were all interested in Bigfoot. And by the way, I say big feet, or no, I say Bigfoot, excuse me. I say Bigfoots as a plural, but you can say big feet, big feet. But I say Bigfoots. With the S. I know that's not, I have a degree in English literature, okay, but I still say Bigfoot. But okay, so everyone, we feel like there's no coincidence that we all came together as a team. I mean, I believe in reincarnation. I'm not saying this is the case, but I think that we all came here for a reason. Okay. Sure. And maybe, and even you and I, we probably worked together our last few lifetimes. Who knows? I
have no doubt that prior to coming into these bodies and onto the earth at this time, we would have sat and arranged and said, yes, on the 2nd of April, 2024, that's our day.
That's right. That's right. Well, we all had an interest in Bigfoot. Now, this is interesting because a lot of people, when it comes to the Bigfoot field research, it's usually a lot of times it's people who are already interested in ghost hunting or something else. It's like a gateway, you know, to the Bigfoots, or it's people who had a Bigfoot experience. Now, I had never had a Bigfoot experience in my lifetime prior to becoming a Bigfoot field researcher, but I had been seeing ghosts. I've seen many ghosts in my lifetime. I have always been attuned. I've been in tune and attuned to the paranormal since I was a little kid. When I was a little kid, I was really interested in UFOs for some reason. Right. And I would go outside and I would take a little mat or a blanket, and I lived on a farm out in the middle of the country. And so the sky was just full of stars at night. And I would lay out in the front yard looking for UFOs at night. So I don't think the other kids that I was growing up with did, but it was me. But I would also, you know, I'd wake up at night. I always felt like there was something looking in my windows and stuff. Like I was always felt like I was being watched. And I'm not a paranoid person by nature, you know, or a kid, but I think that there was something to it. Okay, I think there was, because as I got older, I would wake up and there would be people standing around my bed at night. And they would talk to me, but their mouths would never move. And I remember, and I always wondered, like, how am I hearing their words, but their mouths aren't moving?
Right.
So I was being communicated with telepathically by whatever was there. And not only was I seeing the typical ghost, I was seeing solid people in my house that dressed like Victorian era clothing, and they were as solid as you and I. And they would sit there telling me things without moving their mouths. And so that's kind of how it got started. Of course, I had a lot of tragedy as a young adult, not as a kid, but as a young adult. I lost a lot of people very close to me in accidents or in childbirth and things like that. My brother passed away in an accident. My best friend died having a baby. My boyfriend committed suicide. I mean, I had so many things that were happening, and half of my family I felt like had passed away. So I hit a point where I was looking for answers. Okay. And so I started getting into psychic readings. I started getting into having my tarot cards read and making appointments to go see a gentleman who had a ghost box, a spirit box. to communicate with the dead, you know, I was just looking for, you know, comfort, I guess, in knowing that my loved ones were okay on the other side. And through that, it really opened me up. Okay, because I started realizing that if these wonderful people who are reading my tarot cards can do it, I could probably do it, you know. And so I got really interested in that aspect, the esoteric side of life, and it led me to go into these meetings with my mom, and on Wednesday nights at someone's house in the community, who would bring in people that did, like, they talked about anything from ghost hunting to gold and silver to survivalists to magicians, you know, whatever. It was like a variety show. And one Wednesday night, they had some Bigfoot field researchers that were coming to speak. And my mom said, "Hey, Jessica, you're going to like this. There's some guys from North Georgia, where we live. They're going to be talking about their Bigfoot field research. You might want to come." And so I did. And they invited me to an expedition that night after I went and saw their presentation. And that's how I got into Bigfooting, was through them going to that meeting. But I had 100% had lots of experiences with ghosts. I saw a ghost when I was 16. I think the first one I saw that I can remember seeing was when I was 16 years old. I think I saw a ghost before that, of course, but the one that I remember that was solid right in front of my face while I was awake one day, when I was volunteering at an old haunted house, doing some work. The house was haunted. The job wasn't. Okay. But I actually opened up a door to a closet, and there was an actual, like, ghost in there. It was a big orb that was just floating right in front of my face. And
Wow.
and so, yeah, so it kind of is a progression, I guess you could say, into remote viewing.
Wow. It's amazing because, you know, whether we choose to believe it or see it or not, there are certainly those of us who definitely see these things. There's a lot that goes on beyond the physical, you know, and it's, you know, some of it is bad. Absolutely. There are some of that can be demonic, but I don't believe all of that is, you know. I've also been seeing spirits from when I was tiny. I was hearing the voices of the animals. I could animal communicate from when I could walk, basically. I remember these things so well. And of course, when people don't understand it, you get condemned for it, right? But it was something so strong in my life as well, which is amazing. So I'm really, it's wonderful to hear that. It's wonderful to hear. So then it's just progressed into this where you are now. And literally now you're actually remote viewing into certain things and certain spaces and areas and things like that as well. And where I mean, it's so helpful actually in so many ways, in my opinion. Yeah. Do you find it helpful?
Well, I do, big time, because it's just a new way to and it's actually not new. They've been doing this for a long time. This has been around forever. What remote, and I probably need to explain what remote viewing is to the audience today, because there's probably a lot of people that either don't know what it is exactly, or there's sometimes people will say they're remote viewing, but it's not the same remote viewing that I do. So it's different. Because there's the type of remote viewing that I do is very scientific. Okay. There's actually data. I draw out charts. I sit down with usually a tasker, someone who gives me the coordinates. I do coordinate remote viewing. This is something that our military uses. Governments all over the world use remote viewing for things, and they have the earliest form of it that I've been told that our military in the United States use it as was back during the Cold War, because the Americans heard that they found out Russia was using psychic spies. So they said, well, we've got to use psychic spies. Okay, so they started programs like Project Jedi, Project Stargate. You might have seen the movie The Men Who Stare at Goats. Okay,
yes,
that's what I do. That's remote viewing. I'm not staring at goats. But that's the program stems from, or what I do stems from those programs, basically. But I'm just a little civilian over here. I've never been part of the military, so but that's what I use. Yeah.
So you've also, along with seeing a lot of cryptids and being involved with Bigfoots, stuff like that as well, you've been tasked with observing certain underground bases, tunnels, underground places, stuff like that. How about you tell us about some of the stuff that you've actually seen? I'd be very interested to hear that, because of course, we all want to know what happens in Area 51. But I mean, it's like Caleb, who's also a guest on the show. He says, well, what about the other 50? What about the other 50 underground bases, right?
Yeah, the other 50. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
They're everywhere. They're everywhere. And so I want to kind of preface this by letting the audience know that I get blind coordinate targets. So I don't know what I'm remote viewing. And I have merely stumbled upon most of the underground facilities through through targets that had nothing to do with underground facilities, or at least the tasker didn't know what I was going to find. Okay, and that's the whole point of remote viewing really is to find out information that you might not be able to know unless you have a psychic looking into it. Okay, but the process. Let me kind of explain the process briefly, because I am given a set of coordinate numbers. Now those coordinate numbers are random numbers. There's 8 numbers usually. 8 or it depends, but usually there's 8 numbers. They're random, but they are assigned a target. Okay, and so the target can be a person, a location. It can be an event. It could be the Statue of Liberty here. It could be a Civil War battle. It could be, somewhere where there's someone kidnapped and they need to be found. I get tasked with missing persons cases, cold cases. I have to admit, most of the missing persons and cold cases that I've been tasked with, the person was deceased almost every time. But whenever I find or I locate the target, when I detect a person in the environment, I do what's called a deep mind probe, and you can talk to that person, okay, and find out who they are, what happened, and where are they. Okay, so I've been able to do that and locate some, let's just say, bodies, I guess you can say, and things like that.
So like missing bodies, stuff like that as well. What happened, etc., etc. Wow, how interesting. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So I love remote viewing. It is my jam. Okay, this is my favorite hobby, obviously. The other teammates, I have other people that do it too. They enjoy it, but not like I do. Okay, it's just something that I love, and I do it a lot.
Passionate about. Are there any specific cases that you could maybe share with us? 1 or 2 of those missing bodies or kind of thing that you can tell us about?
Yes, well, there's at least 1 or 2 that revolve around a very well-known lake in Georgia. That's Lake Lanier. And if you look up Lake Lanier, I know Bryce is in the chat. She knows all about it. They say that's a haunted lake, and many people go missing and drown in that lake every year. Well, it's because that lake used to be communities and towns, and it's one of those man-made lakes. They came in and they wiped out huge communities. Bryce and I have talked about this. We think that there's been a cover-up, okay, potentially, of historical markers and things that we are not supposed to see. Apparently, I think that's what some of this could be. But see, people don't understand. There's churches, steeples, there's trees, there's all sorts of stuff in this lake. And so when people are drinking and having fun on the weekends on this lake, they dive into this lake and they get caught up in these trees and these buildings. Okay, and they don't ever come back up. They don't surface. Well, it's also a dumping ground for criminals as well, apparently. And so I've had a couple of cases. My very first missing persons case, I was just given a set of numbers. It was a high priority target. I didn't know what it was. I had never had a missing persons case before. I had just gotten practice targets up until this. And I did locate a person who had been unalived, I guess we could say, on YouTube. Okay, and this person had been unalived, but I didn't know it at the time. But I was picking up on gunshots, a blast. I was picking up on, actually I drew a picture, because a part of the remote viewing, what you do is you get these numbers. I sit down with a stack of printer paper, like white paper, and a whole bunch of pens, okay, just in case I run out of ink. And I draw out charts, okay? And as soon as I write those numbers down, I have a process that I go to, that I do automatic writing called ideograms. I start writing out stages. I go, stage 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And all this information starts flooding in to me, like all my sensory data. I start seeing things. I start hearing things. I start smelling things. I can feel things. I get emotional. Every single thing that I experience during that session, I write it down on the paper. And there's somewhere on those charts for me to write it down. Everything. Okay, so I'm writing down what turned out to be a dam. The dam at that lake where I was hearing white noise. I drew out a picture of what the dam looks like. Well, I was also picking up that there was something like a community area with picnic tables. I'm writing all this down in my data, and I'm seeing a dead body float up right there by some picnic tables. And I actually have all this in my data. Granted, I have a set of 8 numbers. How do I get all this information out of 8 numbers? Well, it's called remote viewing. And it wasn't that day that body was found, because this guy had disappeared. It was a gentleman who had been walking home. I can't remember. I've got his name, but I don't know if I want to say it. But he was the last time he was seen walking past a CCTV camera at a gas station, wearing his pajama pants and some shoes and a jacket. And in my data, he had been picked up by somebody and he was shot. Okay. And it turns out months later, it was months later, his body did surface, and he had been shot and dumped in that lake. And he was found right by a marina picnic area, right there, wow, exactly where my data had suggested. So
when you say you're given numbers, is it are the numbers you're given, are they coordinates?
Yes. Well, they're not geographical coordinates. No. Well, they can be, but they're just random numbers. You can assign any numbers to these targets. It doesn't matter. Just any, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 8, 2 or something. You can just put any of them. But those numbers are connected to that target. Okay, whatever the target is, the person who tasks it to me gives it those numbers.
Wow. That's incredible. So you were able to locate him based on that. And did he surface? Did he actually float to the surface? Yeah. Or
yeah, he did.
When we say surface is the proverbial, well, they found him. Yeah.
The body eventually surfaced. Yes.
Wow.
At that area. There's another case. I was actually asked to look into a case with a pretty well-known podcast. I don't know if it's still going, but I don't know if I'll say that. It was Nancy Gray show. Okay. And I knew somebody who partnered with her on that. And they asked me, they had a cold case here in Georgia. And they were asking if I would do a remote viewing on it, because the case had gone cold. They had already interviewed everybody that could have possibly had anything to do with this guy who had disappeared. It was a guy here in Georgia, the state where I live. And he was an Army veteran, a military veteran. And he had a part-time job at a gas station, and he went missing. I guess he was having problems with his wife, and so he went home with one of the guys that he worked with, and he was never seen again after that night. And so they had gone and they had interviewed everybody that was involved in the case. His ex-wife, the people were suspecting it was his ex-wife, or his current wife had done something to him, or her family or somebody had. And so I didn't know. I was just given some numbers. I looked into it. I picked up that someone had gotten in a fight with their teammate. And I kept hearing the word teammate. And there was a lot of drinking and drugs and stuff involved. And someone was accidentally unalived. So yeah, and I actually was able to do a deep mind probe on this guy, and his face. I remember his face was covered in mud. And all I could see were eyes. I could see the whites of his eyes. And he was looking at me like he was like scared or terrible. He looked scared. He was like confused. And I kept asking him, I said, where are you? What happened? And he said something about his teammate. He said his teammate, he got in a fight with his teammate, and he's buried. He said that he was locked up and he couldn't get out. He said, I'm locked up and I can't get out. but he was covered in mud. And so when I relayed all this information to my contact there, he goes, "Oh no, Jessica, that can't be. We've already," I said, "Who was the person he was with the night he went missing?" And he said, "Oh no, that guy, there's no way he did that. We've already interviewed him." And I said, "No, I think you need to look at him." And they discounted what I had to say. And few months later, lo and behold, the guy whose house he was at, he had sold his home, and the new tenants, the new residents, were tearing down the back porch, and they went to go tear the porch down, and there was concrete underneath the porch, and so they tore the concrete up, and lo and behold, that guy's body was underneath it, and he had been buried underneath the concrete there by his teammate, the guy he worked with. So yeah, it's really interesting that remote viewing, it can be very on target. Okay, very on target.
I agree with that. Yeah, I fully agree with that. I've worked on a few cases as well with the cops, and it's actually fascinating what one comes up with, and that's amazing though. So you solved a cold case. I mean, I love those cold cases being solved. In fact, that's probably my favorite TV shows, that the one called Cold Case. I just love it. Okay, it's nothing like that, but when they find, when they kind of solve these cases 10 or 15 or 20 years later, I think that is amazing. And I just think it's so important because, it really does bring peace to that person's soul. And I think everyone deserves some kind of closure, right? And I just think that's incredible. And especially when you're finding these lost bodies or things that, if people, just getting closure on whatever level, I think that is so important. So I think it's amazing. And it's true. There are people like you and myself out there who see these things, who hear these things, who understand these things. And I think what's happening now, with these type of disclosures as well, more and more and more of them are going to start coming out. And I think that's amazing. I think that's absolutely incredible what you do. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Well, the other cases that I'm going to get into and just here in a second, I've been coming across inadvertently underground facilities, okay, and underground bases. And when I am given a target, and I was kind of giving you guys an example, I was giving you an example of kind of what I do before I get into the meat and potatoes of these underground bases and stuff that I've accidentally come across. And then I started getting tasked with some of these by people who have actually been in these facilities or know of people who have been in them. And so I'm giving examples of, or I'm giving targets of cryptid sightings. Dogman, for instance. Now, Dogman is an interesting cryptid, okay, and it's like a werewolf. There's a it's really popular right now, and people are seeing these things all over the place, and so a lot of times people will, and I only take my targets from a couple of people that know how to task me these targets, because there's a science behind it. Okay, to get the information, the correct information, or whatever it is, the targeted information, then you have to know how to word it. Okay, and so I've been tasked with targets that involve where there's a video of a person talking, and behind them there's a creature peeking out from behind a tree. Okay, well, the target is that creature peeking out from behind that tree, and things like that. And so I am tasked those targets, and a lot of times they think I'm just going to see what that creature is, but it turns out, well, there's an underground facility right there, and they're working on cloning and chimeras.
Right. So let's just talk about the Dogman and the werewolves right now. Why do you think there are so many of them around at this point in time?
Well, that's a good question. Well, they date back to centuries ago, the dog-headed men, and there are maps that have been popping up, old world maps. I don't know if we're on some weird, crazy new timeline or what. I don't know what's going on, but there are old world maps where there are is it cynocephali, or I think that's how you say it. Yeah. There's regions and communities of dog-headed people. Okay, yeah. Well, there's also dragons and the blimmies and all sorts of creatures like unicorns that they say they're just mythological creatures, but I tend to disagree with that. I think that they probably existed.
So especially unicorns, most definitely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, well, there's so many sightings of werewolves and dogmen here in the United States, especially in Central America. When in the UK, there's a lot of dogman and werewolf sightings as well. But I think that there's a mix as to why we're seeing them right now. I think first of all, they've always been here, personally.
Yes.
But second of all, I think that there could, and what I've been told, there's potentially breeding programs of these things, and our government is working with some of them. Okay, and so maybe that's why.
I fully agree with that. I think this hybrid thing has been going on for a long time. I mean, we're just looking how they trying to normalize that. I mean, if Jesse has often spoken about how they would in the breeder programs, right? We know that these exist. They have this fascination with pigs. So they would then, while a girl is pregnant, operate on her and put a pig's nose and little pig hooves on the body of the fetus, and then have this half pig. What is the fascination with pigs, though? Are you aware of that? Anything to do with the pigs?
I mean, well, I've heard things. I don't know. Of course, there are people who say that pigs are actually a hybridized wild boar and a human mixed, and that's why some people don't eat the pig meat. And I mean, I've always loved to eat bacon. Okay, but it turns my stomach to think that could be a hybridized human. I mean, they do have very human-like eyes, and they say that that's how you can tell.
And they're super intelligent. I mean, a pig has the intelligence of a 9-year-old child. I mean, that is a very intelligent creature. And yet look how they are treated. And it would not surprise me at all to know that this is what they're doing. And that's why they have this massive fascinations, especially with pigs in the system, and putting pig parts onto a human being as well. And I mean, I was saying it, I can't remember to who in one of the shows, it's like, and I know Jewish people will not eat pork. Makes me wonder if that's actually why they won't eat pork, because they call the meat unclean. Is that why they see it as unclean?
I've thought that too, and I've wondered about that because I've really gotten into talking about the secret space program quite a bit on my channel, because a lot of these targets that I do involve secret space program layover facilities and stuff. Like, weird stuff pops up in my data when I'm looking at cryptids, and so somehow that got the attention of some of the secret space program people, because I'm doing these targets like the TRAPPIST-1 star system and brown dwarf planets and things like that, and just all sorts of stuff that really had ties to the secret space program. And so it got the attention of some of the guys in those programs who are part of the secret space program, did some of the 20 and back space programs, and I started being invited to like conferences and stuff to come present some of my data and talk about these things, and bring in some of the guys on my shows and ladies. And one of those in particular is my friend Daryl James, and he was actually in the U.S. Navy, and he worked at Solar Warden. He willingly went into the secret space program, and he ended up his encounter goes, and his story goes, that he was working alongside like reptilians and things, and he went into these underground bases. He encountered a spider human, a Spider-Man, a real life Spider-Man. And you had mentioned that on a show that you and I had done together the other day. I didn't bring it up. I figured I'd wait till we did this show. Okay, but he has firsthand experience. They called it Max. And he said that Max was pretty terrifying. He actually, if you have a show on my channel where he talks about all of this, but he said that Max ate children, and they threatened him that if he did not behave and do what he was told, he would be fed to Max too. So it's a thing. I have every reason to believe what these the people that were part of these programs have told me, because it lines up with data that I was getting, that I didn't know anything about the secret space program, and I didn't know any of them at all when I first got into this.
I know that I've heard quite a few quite a few from 1 or 2 reliable sources, definitely. That part of, I mean, they have these these chimeras. They're like huge spiders, right? We talk about that as well. And apparently they've got a leg span of like 6 foot. That's a big spider, and they emulate human cries. So they cry like a baby, and they actually eat humans as well. Now that would, again, for me, be like half human, half spider type thing or something. And they're super intelligent as well. And they apparently eat kids, and that's what. And now it makes a lot of sense to me, because when we're looking at a lot of our child trafficking and the way a lot of the kids and these breeder programs are based, stuff like that, it makes sense that a lot of these kids are actually being bred for these things.
Well, it also coincides with the missing persons cases. You know, I mentioned that I look into the missing persons cases. Well, I'm also doing research in national parks and forests, and where we have clusters of missing people. And so it's part of my mission, really, to talk about these missing people and find out, where are they going? What is happening to them? And I think it all is connected.
Totally. It's definitely connected. There's no doubt in my mind. Have you seen anything? I mean, when you talk about the secret space programs, you know, and stuff like that, let's also talk about Area 51. I would imagine that's probably one and the same thing, really.
Okay.
I would, yeah, no, am
Oh yeah,
am I on
yeah,
the right?
100%. Okay, so I was tasked with a blind coordinate target from my friend Tyler Koala of the Journey to Truth podcast. On they used to be on YouTube, but now they're on Rumble. Okay, and so all he did was give me some numbers, and I trust Tyler. You know, he's one of the people that I've let give me a target or two before. And so I have my notes here, because I don't want to get this wrong, because I wanted to talk about this today. It's so interesting. So, okay, so for your audience, if you're not familiar with Area 51, it's a U.S. Air Force military installation in southern Nevada. It's best known as being a hotspot for ET activity. And there was a gentleman who back in 2012 named Colonel Billy Fay Woodard. Okay, Billy Fay Woodard with the U.S. Air Force. He was retired. He claimed that he was from Hollow Earth, and he worked with the Air Force at Area 51 at an underground facility, interfacing with Hollow Earth beings. He claimed that he was sent to work at Area 51 for over 11 years. He relieved a commander at the facility after he had a nervous breakdown. The other guy had a nervous breakdown. He claimed that the first floor was 3 to 4 miles underground inside a mountain. And he claimed also that level 27 of this facility was a cavern with artificial light, with a tunnel which contained Lemurian giants wearing turquoise robes and sandals. They led him to a cylindrical vehicle shaped like a bullet that took him to Telos, which is 1 mile underneath Mount Shasta in California in the US, at a speed of 4,000 miles per hour. He claimed Telos was an underground domed city full of tall humanoids with light turquoise blue skin. He claimed that he was a liaison to these underground beings. Okay. And so Tyler, of course, he's got an amazing podcast. He and our friend Aaron, and they wanted to know, is this testimony real? What is really going on at Area 51? What's underground there? And so he tasked me with that target. And I got to tell you, I don't have the data in front of me, but I do remember what it was. I believe that his testimony was 100% on point, because everything that was in my data aligned with what he had said. And not only was I remote viewing giants, I was seeing giants. I was underground. I was way underground in some kind of facility. There was telepathy going on. There was a lot of military from what I believed was the U.S. government potentially. But I remember writing down like top brass. Okay, top brass, that's like high-ranking officials in our military or some kind of agency were working down there. So I knew pretty much immediately when I got into that target, I was probably somewhere that I shouldn't be. Okay, and that's a real problem.
Invisible? Can you remain invisible when you are remote viewing in places like that?
I mean, I take steps. Let's just say I take steps to protect myself.
Right. I
am protecting myself. So, but I also, I I don't know if I really set up the parameters with him to be like, do not send me to underneath Area 51. You know, I probably should have said that, because once I got, when I get into targets like that, I know that I'm not supposed to be in some areas, and I will politely let myself out. Okay. That's why I only let people who I trust give me the targets. But in this case, nothing bad happened. Okay, everything was fine, and I did get a lot of data out of this. But yeah, I was picking up on like ultra-terrestrials, I believe, which are a little different than extraterrestrials. They're here underground. They're here on our Earth.
What's an ultra-terrestrial?
Ultra-terrestrial, I would consider an ultra-terrestrial something that's here. They're of this Earth. Okay,
Right,
probably
okay.
living underground. And that's another thing that comes up in my data a lot, are ultra-terrestrials, or beings that are living inside our Earth. It's gotten me almost a little confused now, right? Because what I always consider to be what extraterrestrials are, I believe most of them are ultra-terrestrials. They're not coming from outer space. They're coming from inside the Earth.
Inner space, yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
I fully agree with that, most definitely. Yeah, I think there's so much, you know, because if we consider that we're like literally living in a fallen world, think about that. It's like caved in, fallen, things are inside, under, and all about, which is why they're having so many underground bases, which is why they have the deep underground tunnels, the dams, right? Deep underground military bases, stuff like that. Everything is very dodgy that happens underneath us. We look at the giants and things also underground.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I was tasked with the giant of Kandahar too, and there was a lot of inner Earth data for that one as well. They came from inner Earth, and that's where they were living. Also, I have several other targets that involve inner Earth. One of which was okay, I don't know if you're familiar with the Dyatlov Pass incident in Russia. There were some hikers that went missing, and they were found. They were all unalived or dead, potentially from hypothermia, but something happened to them. It's been a great mystery since, I think it was the 1950s. I believe after doing that blind target, the data had so much information about military, something about a commandant, I remember. And, you know, like I said, these are blind targets. So I was coming up with words that, like, it was 100% on target with this. But I think that they crossed a boundary. They got caught in a blizzard, kind of, and they got off course where they were hiking. And I think that they went into an area, this is my opinion through the data, if they're analyzing my data, by the way, for entertainment purposes only here. Yeah. But I think that they got off course, and I believe that there was some guards, or there was something going on there that was guarding an entrance to inner Earth right there. And I think that they were made an example of, at least the last 4 whose bodies were found that were mutilated, because they were mutilated like ET, like cow mutilations, but in human form.
Wow.
Yeah, this was in the 50s. So,
well, didn't these things really start? I mean, I know it's been around for a long time, but didn't it really start getting quite wild in the 50s when it started coming, you know, regarding the ETs and the UT, shall we call it? And there's the ETs or the UTs, you know. I think the 50s, if I remember correctly, was really when it started getting quite crazy.
Well, that's around the same time that it's rumored that, I believe it was it President Eisenhower here in the U.S. had struck a deal. And now I don't know if this is true. This is just the rumor and what I've heard. Struck a deal to allow the ETs to start abducting humans in exchange for ET technology.
Exactly. Well, I think makes perfect sense, because if you look at what started happening, because really that's what it is. All of this technology we're using right now is definitely coming from a much higher realm than what we are privy to mostly. It's definitely, I mean, I think it's been around since forever as well, honestly. It's very, very potent. So yeah, wow.
Oh, yeah.
Very interesting.
Well, there's another case we can talk about if you'd like, of underneath Davenport, Iowa. That's my friend Arkeem Ra. He has been part of some
fascinating guy. Wow.
Oh yeah. So Arkeem is part. I met Arkeem at the Journey to Truth conference last year. I mentioned my friend Tyler, and that's really they're really into exposing the secret space programs and things. Okay, so so I was a speaker at that conference last year, and I met a lot of very just amazing people. And one of those is Arkeem Ra, who has become a good friend of mine. And he's been involved in Project Phoenix, a lot of like MK Ultra mind control projects and things like that. He's got some of the best encounters, firsthand stuff, it's tragic, but it involves a lot of mind control and, being made to do really horrible things, let's just say, under these programs. But I have let him give me a couple of targets as well. And one of those involves a place that he remembers being during these programs. And he wanted to see if his memories were correct and if this had really happened. So he gave me a blind target of underground Davenport, Iowa. And it was, okay, so this is, I'm gonna read exactly what the target was and kind of what he tasked me with. He tasked me the blind coordinate target of underground, a specific address. Okay, so he gave me the geographical location as coordinates. Is what he did, but I didn't know what it was. Okay, it's blind. A suspected underground facility with potential cloning technology, controversial experiments, time bubbles, and strange cryptids, such as the Blimmy, which is a headless human.
Yes. Aren't those Lemurians the Blimmy?
I don't know. That's a good question. I have no idea. I don't know. Yeah. They're interesting though. Those are one of the beings that are on one of the old world maps, the same maps that you can find the dog-headed people, the unicorns, the dragons. They have blimmies as well. Wow. And there are communities of blimmies. Now, blimmies look really odd, okay, because it's like a whole human body with a torso, but there's no head, and the face is in the chest of the torso.
Yeah. Fascinating. And they got hair down the back as well.
Yeah. They look weird. It's weird. By human standards, it's weird. Okay. But yeah, he targeted me with this. This is my target. And I was able to, I don't have the data in front of me today, but I was able to confirm whatever this target was what he thought it was. I was even picking up on hybrids, what I was considering to be like human hybrids of some sort. And but it is a blimmy. Yeah, blimmy. Yeah, I highly recommend everyone looking that up, because they do look, it's almost like a Humpty Dumpty type looking thing, but they say they're real and they exist, and they're underground at this facility. Now, I did pick up on a cloning facility down there, and he does have memories of it being a cloning facility. And so I believe there are places like this pretty much all over. Okay, I'm not saying we have cloning facilities all over the world underground, but I think we might. I don't know.
And I have dreams. For me, I have very specific dreams. Like I wake up and it's so clear for me, and I have seen that. What you're talking about, those cloning facilities, I've definitely seen. And it's like that's where they'll go, and especially when you're looking at the royals, especially the higher people, like the ones that need presidents or whatever it is, the royal families, the presidents, etc. That for me is what I've seen, and they'll have at least 3 clones of per person or whatever. That's what I've seen. 3, I would see 3 clones of whatever it was or whoever it was. Really, it's fascinating. I definitely, and I mean, I'm loving what you're saying, because it's not something I often speak about. Because it just sounds so crazy,
Well, it does, but then I'm meeting all these amazing people who, and I know firsthand, and I know a lot of them have gotten a lot of slack, and they even get scoffed at and made fun of, or they have in the past. But I mean, when I am remote viewing things that verify, and I don't know any of their stories, I don't know anything, I don't even know about the programs, and I'm verifying all this information before I know about any of them. It's just a natural collaboration that we're doing now, for me to come in and them give me some targets, so we can kind of figure out what's really going on down there. Like, what's really going on in these facilities? Are their memories correct? I mean, and some of these gentlemen claim that they're in clone bodies right now. and they
Right.
remember being cloned, and they know how their other body died and stuff.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's
Because they would
kind
have
of hard
those
to wrap your head around.
memories. Their memories are downloaded. It's
Hmm.
like they have the technology or the information, if you will, that they can literally download those memories into the clone, and the clone can act on those memories for X amount of time. It's not like a long living thing, but it can be there for X amount of time, and that's why they would have more than one, in my opinion. That's
Oh
what I
yeah.
see.
I just saw, okay, I just saw, so I'm noticing things now. Okay. And I was watching, and there's a guy that I actually knew personally. I met him back in Atlanta. I used to have a lot of fun back when I was younger. You know, I've lived in Atlanta, Georgia, and I used to go to all the clubs and bars with my friends. And I knew a lot of pretty well-known famous people and stuff. And there's this one guy who's a rapper. He's now, since he's gotten tattoos all over his face and stuff. He's, you know, that's the style now, I guess. And he just put out this song. I'm not going to call out who he is, okay? But he just put out this song that I just saw, and I love his music. But all of his face tattoos are gone, and the song is about brand new me, the brand new me. And I was and I can't help but think, is that his clone? It's got to be a clone. He's gotten so big now. He has been cloned. I
For
think
sure.
so, for
Yeah,
sure.
that
Yeah.
makes sense. And you know what I'm loving? What's this comedian, Cat, the
Williams,
black,
Cat
what,
Williams.
that's him. I'm loving the intel he's putting out there right now. And I was seeing something, isn't that interesting? With like the guys of Eddie Murphy, there's 7 of them, all African Americans that have literally sold out, and they've got all these pale-faced wives, and he points it out, you
Jamie
know,
Foxx.
and
Yeah,
yeah,
all of them. A lot of guys.
and they hardly smile, and so it makes me wonder what these women are, who these women are that have been given to these guys, because they don't say much. Yeah, you know, he obviously knows quite a bit about this. I'm just loving the information that he's putting out there. I mean, obviously all the stuff with P. Diddy and what have you as well.
Ugh.
It's so important that this information is coming out now. Wow, it's amazing. It's
They're
amazing. Yeah,
handlers, probably. I don't know.
yeah,
Probably handlers.
yeah,
I
for
know.
sure. But they don't even look real. That's the thing. They don't even
It,
look real. It's like they are clones of sort as well. It's like little zombies, like these honeypot zombies, little clone things. I don't even know.
well, it's
But
probably MK Ultra, and it's
yeah,
probably a little bit of MK Ultra, and honeypot comes to mind too. I don't know.
yeah,
So I'm no
definitely.
expert, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think we've learned enough to know about that. Wow, that is so fascinating. But I certainly do agree in terms of what you're saying there. There's just so much going on underground. And as you say, it's the ones that are gay. I mean, in my opinion, anyway, it's the famous people, the really famous people. I
Mhm.
saw 1 or 2 very famous clones down there, and I'm like, what? Wake up with a start, and I get, and you know, for those first few seconds, it's like, jeez, that's almost like I'm still there. But
Yeah.
it's very, yeah. No, they
Well,
definitely got something like that going on there for sure.
yeah, and you probably never notice. I mean, I just notice like when their tattoos are different, or there's no mole on the
Yes.
face, or there's just something off, and in your mind you want to say, well, they must have gone to the dermatologist, you know, and gotten some kind of
Right.
treatment. But the chances are, in this day and age, it's either, I mean, there could be masks, there could be holograms, there could be clones. Okay, it could be anything. So,
Like our famous princess
oh yeah,
that
Catherine.
yeah,
Yes. Kate.
that has disappeared in December and come back without a mole on her face, and glitching with her wedding ring when she's sitting on the bench with her strappy top, and the bench on the one side of her, the slats are much wider apart than on the other side. It's crazy, and
Pay
people get
attention. Yeah, if we just
believe
pay
it.
attention, you can
Yeah,
see like it's just looking for the little things. It goes
yeah,
a long way. And I know Bryce and Tamara and myself, we did a show on that where I had remote viewed where she was, and Tamara had done her chart and her astrological charts and things. And I don't think that's the real Kate. I think the Kate's put up somewhere. Yeah.
No, it's not the real Kate. They cloned her. This is her clone. I mean, yeah, I've got my own opinion and I don't want to state it out too loudly. But definitely it's not her. For sure it's not her.
No, I wasn't. Oh, I'm sorry. I saw somebody in the audience was asking if I was talking about Tom McDonald. No, I was not talking about him. No,
oh, right.
That was not him. He's not the famous rapper I was talking about. It's somebody different from here in the South. That's all.
But I'm just, the one who I see with so many tattoos on his face is one of the Kardashians' husband. Whenever.
Oh my gosh, there's so many people with tattoos all over their face now. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a style, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. We'll talk about clones. I mean, my gosh, those girls have got more plastic than Barbie herself.
I know, right? I know. It's just, it's almost ridiculous.
It's like crazy, right?
Yeah.
They look completely.
Yeah. Wow. No, they look like their own chimera. They're plastic chimeras. Just kidding.
It's I know, but I wonder how true that is. I mean, especially speaking about that family. I mean, if you look at the one for me that is really, I mean, never mind Kylie or Kim, but Chloe, I mean, is like so completely different. I'm wondering if she hasn't been cloned, because I mean, they talk. I mean, I don't know, those lips of hers. I mean, the worst thing for me is her lips right now. Just those lips that they've done that with. I mean, it's crazy to see what they're doing. It's either plastic surgery, they're making us believe that that's possible with plastic surgery, or they've definitely got another clone going on there. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah. They're probably cloned. I don't know. I mean, then we come to the whole topic of like, well, how many people are here who we also have people who don't have souls walking amongst us and things like that too. So I'm talking about cryptids and Bigfoot and dogmen and stuff, but we also talk about, and I know someone in the chat earlier had mentioned demons and demonic stuff, and we talked about that. You know, there's like demonic entities taking over hollow shell bodies and stuff too. I mean, we have so many weird things going on around us, and
it's like the Raphael. They you know, it's like for sure. They'll take anybody because that's what they want. You know, they don't have the right anymore to have a body because of their dodgy deeds. So they'll grab anything they can. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. But how exciting are these times we're living in, right? To witness all of this.
I mean, I'm here for it. I'm buckled up. I tell my audience every time, I'm like, buckle up, buttercups. We're in here. Wild ride.
I'm so here for it. Now I ain't going anywhere. I'm staying put. So anyone who thinks I'm going anywhere soon, you can all just think again.
Yeah. No, I'm here for it. I am right in the middle of all of it now, and we're just looking into it, just having fun doing it too. Because we deserve to know the truth, you know, and I think the veil is gone. It's thin so much that it's time for the truth to be known, and we are the disclosure for this stuff at this point. No one's going to tell us, so why not use a remote viewer to look into stuff, you know? And
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. And you know, I think God has given us all beautiful and specific gifts. We are all gifted in our own way. You know, there will be those that don't agree. That we should use our God-given gifts. And I always think it's, you know, and as we always say, you know, only God can create. The Lucy's emulate or invert. So just because they're using it in a nefarious way does not mean that there are those of us who have these God-given gifts and use them in the light of God that shouldn't be using them for tasks or stuff like this. What do you think? God doesn't want us to wake up and get smart, so and have people who can do these things and show us the way, the truth, you know, and I think that's incredible. So I honor you for what you're doing as well. It's really, really good.
Thank you.
It's
fun. I like it.
It is fun, isn't it? It's great fun. But I would love to have you on again. So when we get off, I would love to chat with you about that. And I know we've sort of reached our time now. So I want to just say to you, Jessica, the Cryptid Huntress, thank you so, so much for joining me. I know it's midday for you, evening for me. And I've started my 24-hour, we've started doing the 24-hour dry fast. I started at 6 p.m. my time today, and we'll go through until 6 p.m. tomorrow. So those of you joining in the fast, our group is doing the dry fast. Hang in there, and thank you for joining us. It's always amazing when we have group fasting. It's super powerful, breaking through the veils, just bringing in the light, showing us the truth, you know, and that's what we truly need to be seeing. So is there anything you would just like to say in ending off before we bid each other farewell for the moment?
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for having me here. This has been a really great time. And I do want to mention that when I do my remote viewing targets, I usually do them in the mornings when I have not eaten, before I have any kind of food or anything, because it does make you more of an open channel for things, and you're able to really bring the information in and out. You know what I mean? So, so that's a great thing that you're doing. I wish I had known. I might have done it with you, but I already had my coffee today. So.
Well, you know what we do? We're doing it every Tuesday from dusk on until Tuesday until dusk on a Wednesday. So we're doing it like once a week. So please join us. And you know, even if you don't do a dry fast, I mean, I always say I love fasting because I don't really like eating too much. So it's easy for me to have like a 3-day water fast or a 5-day. I fasted for up to 10 days, right? So I started, in fact, with Caleb. Caleb introduced me to dry fasting because that's the Native American way. He's half Native American. So you literally don't have water either, unless obviously, I mean, if you're dying or whatever, you're going to take it, or just take a tiny sip of water if you really need it. But wow, not having the water took it to a whole nother level. But I'll only do it for 1 day. I'm not going to, you know, I just don't want to do it for more than that. Water, I think, is very important that we drink the water. But for 1 day, and just because, you know, the fasting is always the African Bushman will talk about the little hunger and the great hunger. The little hunger is the hunger you have in your belly. And the great hunger is that hunger for your desire, for knowledge, for purpose. So when you bypass the little hunger, right, and when you can move through the little hunger, and you can, because we actually just we use food in so many ways just to numb so much stuff down as well. Of course, food is necessary, but it's so good just not to have it. And then you're seeking, and in those times you're super hungry or super thirsty, just to sit, pray, meditate, talk to God, you know, whatever it is. And man, oh man, then the breakthroughs just come. It's fascinating. It's wonderful. So I hope many of you are joining. And if you can't join this week, that's fine. And if you don't want to do the dry fast, do the water fast, or have some lemon water, or do it for half a day, whatever works for you. But it's just such a powerful thing to do. So I really hope that all of you or many of you will be joining. And if not this week, then next week. But it's been amazing, Jessica, and I'd love to chat with you just a little bit off air. So I want to have you on again for sure, because I think there's many things that you can still share with our viewers here.
Well, thank you. Oh, and I want to tell the audience, please go to my YouTube channel if you want to see my work and all my shows. I do live shows on my channel. It's the Cryptid Huntress on YouTube, and I'm on Rumble, but my shows air live on YouTube and Facebook. It's the Cryptid Huntress. Go subscribe and go check out my videos, and all the videos we talked about plus more are on there.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. Well, what I can do is you can just send me the links if you haven't already.
Okay.
And then I'll just put them down in the description area as well.
Awesome.
So for you guys just to catch. Yeah, absolutely. And fascinating, some great guests you've got on there as well. And honestly, this is the time where we get to know about things like this. Those of us who think we humans are the only thing that exists in the universe. I'm sorry.
No, there's a lot of weird stuff out there. You can take it from the Cryptid Huntress. Yeah, there's a lot of strange things lurking in the shadows and out in the open.
Exactly, and in the sun.
Yes.
Yeah, there we go. Bryce has just put it in youtube.com the Cryptid Huntress. So yeah, I'll put it in the
Thank you.
description as well. So, but in the meantime, copy that link and go and check out and subscribe to Jessica's channel. You will not be sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody. God bless you all. Take good care of yourselves. And I shall see you tomorrow. I'm seeing you with Jessie and, of course, Bryce. Bryce and I tomorrow. Oh, what's that? Chad Daybell. Chad and Laurie Daybell. We're doing that tomorrow on Solutions with Shanti. So join us for that. I mean, how crazy are these people killing their children? And it's all the freaking Mormon church. I'm sorry. It's like crazy. Anyway.
Ew.
Very sad to have parents killing their children and doing these horrific things to their children. Man, oh man.
We live in a weird, crazy world, crazy time.
We sure do. We sure do. And this to me is such a typical example of religion gone wrong. And this whole, I always say God wants spiritual fruit and not religious nuts. This is religious nuts that have gone wrong. Okay. Okay, everybody. See ya.
Bye. Thank you.